What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and in today's video we're finally gonna do it. We're building an all-Corsair gaming setup for 2021, and boy, I have never seen so much black and yellow in all of my life. From our PC components today to our peripherals and some of Corsair's latest fancy keyboard releases, anything in this setup that can be Corsair will be. So without any further ado, let's dive straight into it. I'm going to jump into the peripherals in just a second, and I'm quite excited actually, because Corsair have sent over the K65 RGB Mini, and then the brand new K70 RGB 10 keyless. I'm a big 10 keyless keyboard fan, but more on keyboard sizes a bit later. Let's start things off by putting the PC build together. And today I've opted to build an RTX 3070 and Ryzen 5 5600X system. This 3070 is going to be ideal to drive games at 1440p and even a little bit of 4K, while giving us those really high frame rates. Those high frame rates are going to be important for our FPS titles later on, and the mouse and the headset and stuff we've chosen are particularly good for those high frame rate competitive games. The Zotac RTX 3070 is a bit of a look at. I think it looks fantastic actually, with this really cool kind of halo RGB design that is a bit gamery, is a bit gimmicky, but you know, it does stand out, and we like something a bit different here on the channel. I'm going to be building today's system inside Corsair's iQ5000X, one of my favorite chassis of this year, and you can find some of our build content we've already done in it in the cards section now. With support for plenty of radiators and water cooling, a nice vertical GPU mount option, and a really spacious configurable interior, I think the case looks great. I really like the X version, the iQ version, as it gives you some RGB fans as standard in the box. In fact, there's some of Corsair's latest fans out there. This is a really great value add in a case that actually doesn't cost as much as what you might think. In terms of the processor for this system, I've opted to go for AMD's latest Ryzen 5 5600X. I've been impressed by some of the price to performance you can find with the new Intel 11th gen, but if you can get your hands on Ryzen 5000, it's still the answer in my opinion. RAM in this build is provided by, you guessed it, Corsair, and this is their Dominator Platinum RGB. This actually has Capellix RGBs at the top, which are their super bright LEDs. In fact, this is the brightest RAM I've ever used, and we've gone through a lot of RGB RAM on the channel. This dual channel 32GB kit is going to be awesome for our build today and actually match up with our black and white overall aesthetic. Awesome stuff. That looks amazing. All we then need to do is just pop in the storage choice for today's build, and this is from, you guessed it, Corsair. This is their MP600 core. It's actually a fantastic Gen 4 SSD with this quite cool beefy heatsink design that I think looks pretty awesome. And with 1-2 terabyte capacities available as well, you're going to be able to find the right storage config for your build super easily. I genuinely am a huge fan of this case. I think that the airflow and the glass is quite a nice balance. Aesthetically, it still looks really good. And the room for a radiator, which we're going to uncover when we take this cable management shield off in just a second, is a really nice addition. That is already looking pretty good, but before we go ahead and install the graphics card, we're just going to pop in some extra fans at the top and at the back. These are Corsair's range-topping QL fans, lovely stuff, and then also plug up some of our power cables with this lovely Corsair RM850X, an 80+ gold certified fully modular power supply with some nice white cables. What's not to love? And with that, we're ready to install the final component into our system, and that is of course the graphics card. Now this GPU is a bit of an acquired taste, I'll be honest with you. I think the RGB looks great, but some people are going to think it looks a bit tacky, in which case a Founders Edition or a Gigabyte Eagle card are great choices. I think it's going to look great in our system today and actually fit quite nicely in the build. And with that, our system is now complete, and we can go ahead and look at some of the peripheral choices. I want to start off by looking at keyboards and give a huge shout out to Corsair, who sent all these options over and sponsored today's video. First up is the K65 RGB Mini. This is actually a 60% keyboard, which means you don't have any number pad or any arrow keys or any function buttons. It keeps it mega compact, which I know a lot of competitive gamers out there will really enjoy. Me, on the other hand, I'm a 10 keyless fan, which is where the K70 RGB TKL comes in. It's one of Corsair's brand new keyboards. In fact, it's the newest keyboard they've got, and boy does it look good. Now, you do lose the number pad, which is fine for me because I've never really used the number pad. I just used the number row instead, but you still get the arrow keys, which I personally love, stuff. Just for comparison purposes as well, we've got the K70 RGB Mark II low profile. So this is fairly similar to the K70 TKL, but it's low profile and it has that number pad as well. I think the TKL is a really good happy medium between the smallest and the largest layout. As you would expect from Corsair, it's got their fully addressable RGB built in. As I say, those dedicated media control keys, indications for your caps and scroll lock, but of course no number lock because no number pad. You then get your arrow keys here as well. Some really nice cherry switches on this keyboard as well, with plenty of options available. And then of course dedicated RGB and Windows lock controls to disable the Windows key in games. You also get a really nice media scroll wheel. So many companies have copied Corsair here, and a mute button. So once again, for Spotify or for general content consumption, this is going to be great. On the bottom, there's also some nice grippy feet with some extendable feet as well here to give you a slightly better typing angle if that's your thing, and a USB-C connector that's removable. That's a major advantage. It keeps this thing pretty portable, and all keyboards nowadays really should be using the USB standard, in my opinion. All you gamers out there needn't worry as well, because we've got these special textured keys which gives you different options, not only for your W, A, S and D, but some of those MOBA games out there, Corsair really have got you covered with various sets of included keycaps, so you really can make this keyboard your own. You can also see, taking off the keycaps, the genuine real Cherry MX switches, something I think is a little bit of a must really on a high-end keyboard. All of my keyboards that I've daily driven have been Cherry, so I'm personally not looking to switch away anytime soon. Apart from being textured and slightly raised and good for gaming, I also think those keys look absolutely awesome. Let's give you guys a quick typing test as well. It feels really quick actually, this keyboard. Cherry MX red switches are quite quick and linear. I like blues, but red I think are a slightly faster switch, at least for typing at higher speeds, which is something to bear in mind. Other peripheral choices for today's setup include the Corsair HS60 Haptic. This headset has haptic feedback motors in each ear cup to give you mega immersive bass. It's kind of crazy, and I reviewed this in a video you can find on eBuyer's channel in the cards section now. I've also gone for the legendary Corsair M65 RGB Elite. This thing has more 5-star reviews than I think I've ever seen in my life, and rightly so. This mouse is actually daily driven by me here at the office, which you can find in our office tour video, also in the cards section now. If we're talking about PC setup colorways, it doesn't get much better than that. Look at that for a match. That's got to be like exactly the same type of plastic. Awesome. Moving the case over to one side to make room for our extended mouse pad, and I've also picked up the Corsair MM700. This is going to not only protect our desk, but give us a really smooth tracking surface to get the most out of our mouse, and overall add to the aesthetic of today's setup no end. And then finally, to complete the setup, we have of course got our monitor choice today. This is from MSI, and it's just a little bit special. It's a 1440p high refresh rate monitor, 165 Hz to be precise, and this monitor is actually quantum dot. That's right, the insane technology from high-end TVs has made it to the monitor world, and MSI weren't messing about. When you combine that with a super low response time, great for FPS games, some awesome viewing angles, as we'll see in a moment, really thin immersive bezels, and overall actually quite a nice stand, a good build quality. It's one of the more premium monitors I've had the joys of actually checking out recently. So let's get all the components of our setup plugged up and turn it on for the very first time. If the PC boots, who knows? Stay tuned to find out. And we are ready. In 3, in 2, in 1, here we go. Oh, look how good that looks. That's outrageous. All the fans are on. The GPU is actually lit up as well, RGB. I've got to say, the RGB on that keyboard really does stand out. It looks great, especially with those raised keycaps, as you can see there. Let's dive into some games though and see just how well our setup performs and what FPS you guys can get at home with a similar config to this one. Awesome stuff. So we've gone ahead and booted our setup up. I think it's looking pretty good, and we're going to dive into Overwatch first as one of our first performance tests to see just how this PC monitor and peripheral combo really performs. Jumping into the options settings, you can see we're running at 1440p. We're going to enable NVIDIA Reflex with Boost to help reduce those reaction times. We're going to set the graphics quality to ultra, but change the FPS limit to custom and take it all the way up to the maximum. In our advanced settings, we want the render scale to be 100% to avoid any kind of blurry weirdness, and then that's pretty much it. Let's hit apply, and we are using Riva Tuner in the left hand corner, so you guys can see see what kind of FPS we are getting. Jumping into the game of Overwatch, and you can see we're sitting already at nearly 200 frames per second at 1440p on this 3070. This quantum dot monitor looks absolutely insane, and I'm loving the Cherry MX red key switches on Corsair's K70 10 keyless layout. It allows as well for my mouse to be that much closer to the keyboard, which is something I personally really like. Oh, beautiful illumination there. Graphically, this thing looks bonkers, and this is 1440p Ultra. So if you wanted even more FPS, then you could tune down to 1080p, for example. You've got to love that Cherry MX sound as we get another illumination. There is no better sound than a set of Cherry MX Reds, maybe Cherry MX Blues actually. But either way, we're going quite well in Overwatch. As I say, nearly kind of 150 FPS at the minute. That's on Ultra settings as well, remember, which is kind of insane. Another elimination in Overwatch. We are absolutely smashing it today, putting the body on the line. Next up then, we want to try a little bit of COD Cold War, the multiplayer zombies mode. Now you can see here that we're currently sitting around 100 frames per second. This is with high graphical settings at 1440p. Get out of here. We are using the power of NVIDIA's DLSS, but set to quality mode as opposed to kind of extreme performance. And we have got ray tracing disabled. We're playing at 1440p, of course. As I say, sitting around the 120, 140 FPS mark, depending on just how much action is in the scene, and that's great for our 165Hz monitor. I've got to say as well that the double shot PBT keycaps on this keyboard feel absolutely awesome. It's a really comfortable setup actually for just kind of casually gaming, but also playing those FPS style titles out there. And as I say, the game visually looks great, peripherals feel awesome. Big fan of the 10 keyless layout. It's what I've daily driven for a long time. I do like the 60% super small keyboards, but for me, they just haven't quite got that functionality. But something like a full-size keyboard with a load of macros and a number pad is just a little bit overkill for me. So this TKL is kind of a perfect balance actually between the two. And it's also obviously a bit cheaper as well than going for a massive full-size keyboard layout. As you can see, the game looks fantastic and really ties in with the premium nature of today's gaming setup. If you enjoyed this video, something a little bit different, make sure to smash that like button, get subscribed if you haven't already, and latest pricing and availability for everything mentioned today, including Corsair's brand new K70 TKL, will be in the description below. Thanks for tuning in though, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.